I don't know about you, but this awareness that a lot of this stuff has been installed in me and I had no say in it, and now I've got to do the work of getting it out. But every time I stumble over anything that is from those systems of oppression, um, this awareness makes me really mad at that whole system and everyone who's perpetuated. And that anger can be a really useful source of energy. It's a kind of, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. So there's one more or less, so I want to teach you this little exercise. I teach my clients this all the time. There's a more or less universal symbol that sort of wraps up all of those systems of oppression rolled into one. And it's the little guy from the game of Monopoly. You know, the one with his tailcoat and his spats and his cigar and his monocle. Actually, I don't know if he has a cigar. That might just be in my imagination. But you can imagine he's just such a powerful representation of the classic 19th century industrial robber baron. And he represents all of the different deliberate othering of humans, which lies at the heart of those oppressive systems. Can you imagine him letting people who look like us into his special VIP places? I can't. So the shorthand I use for summing up all of those systems is, I call it the patriarchy, but you have a different word for it. You might call it colonialism, you might call it post-industrialism, you might call it late stage capital, whatever you want to call it. There's going to be a term that sort of sums it up for you. For me, it's the patriarchy, by which I include all of it, not just the sort of misogyny piece. So for this exercise, I want you to hold out your non-dominant hand. So hold out your hand in front of you, palm up, like this. So I want you to hold your hand up and imagine that you have a little effigy of him, about the same size as a game counter, sitting in the palm of that hand. And you can imagine it as a little plastic figurine, or you can imagine it as a tiny little living thing, sort of blowing hot air and stamping his feet and being completely ineffectual. And I want you to summon up all of your anger about having this so-called imposter syndrome installed in you and having that reinforced by the ongoing messaging that says imposter syndrome is something wrong with you. You need to fix that. You're the only one who's got that problem. Summon all of that up. Recognize that your outrage, that this was never anything more than a flim-flam con job perpetrated on you by this chap and all the people like him, as indeed are all the other voices of self-doubt you've ever experienced. Imagine all of that rubbish, all of those lies are being gathered into this nonsensical little figure in the palm of your hand. Notice that you are a glorious and unique spark of the cosmic made flesh, and see just how small and insignificant this whole construct is, this little tiny figurine. Imagine how ineffective and insignificant it is compared to you. Now, bring up your other hand, and we're going to be ready to flick this stupid piece of nonsense off your hand out into the vastness of the universe where it can disintegrate into nothingness. And we're all going to do it together. And you're going to say out loud, fuck the patriarchy, or fuck colonialism, or fuck whatever the system is that you dislike so much. You ready? Let's do it. Fuck the patriarchy.
Fuck the patriarchy.
Awesome. Excellent job. That's the very first spark to ignite the explosion. It's this awareness and this decision that this is not our shit, this is somebody else's shit, and now we just have to do the work of rewiring our brain. And that's not a big deal. Rewiring a brain's relatively easy. You may well need to do this more than once, by the way, because the toxic messaging and the toxic systems are all still there, but it's a really good start.